Thank you for taking time out.
All right. So I'm actually, yes, we are recording this meeting. Just in case anybody couldn't make it, we can share this link to those that registered, and they won't miss out on the opportunity. Adding a couple of other people that are joining in. Very excited to have Tracee here with us, author of Radiant Rest. Hello, Frances.
Hi, Frances.
Can you hear us okay, Frances? Sweet. All right, I have a few more people in. Maybe we'll start in 1 minute. All right, Lori and Simone. Okay, everyone. Well, we'll have a few others join in, but we can get started. Hello, my name is Ingrid Baquero. I am a volunteer with SOULFest and here with you today hosting one of our monthly book read meetings. And this is great. It's not actually a meeting. Meeting sounds actually very well. We're having a beautiful discussion today to talk about our featured guest, Tracee Stanley, author of Radiant Rest. If you have the book, here it is, beautiful.
Yay.
So yes, so here at SOULFest, we started book club, I believe, yes, in March, and we're really excited to introduce authors that have the practice of sharing wellness and culture and really beautiful practices that we can bring into our lifestyle for a better way of living, more conscious, more aware, and bringing it into our lives. So thank you for joining us. Hi, Mary Lou. And with no further ado, I'd like to introduce Tracee Stanley, who is the author of Radiant Rest, who has been a teacher and actually been involved to discover Yoga Nidra about 20 years ago, correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Such a rich practice. So before you jumped on board, everyone was discussing with Tracee about her journey, how we ended up with this beautiful book about really taking a moment and embracing rest and giving us the time and space to allow for us to deserve rest versus as some automatic thing we need to do in order for us to continue our daily hustle. How important it is to really take the moment and acknowledge that we are very important, and we need to make sure that this is one of our priorities to keep us being radiant, to have clarity, and to really focus on our purpose. So without further ado, hello, Tracee.
Thank you, Ingrid, for that beautiful introduction. I really appreciate it. So I also see Libby is here, who just joined. Hi, Libby, and hi, Mary Lou, and some of you who have your video off. Hello, and also to those who will have their videos on later, watching this on replay. So what I would love to do before we officially kind of jump into the discussion of Radiant Rest is I would really love for us to just close our eyes. And if you have a journal near you or a notebook or something that you can write with, it's always good to have that next to you. So when you feel ready, just go ahead and allow your eyes to close. And just begin to feel into the fact that your body is breathing. And perhaps you can even bring your awareness to the tip of the nose and just feel that moment where the breath enters the nostrils. And then as you sense the body exhaling, just feel for receiving an inhale. And as the body receives inhale, you sense that there is this vitality that is entering the body. And as the body exhales, you feel and sense that you are releasing anything that is heavy, dull, lethargic. And just do that 2 more times, just aware of your breath. And as this vitality enters your body, you just remember that your breath is a birthright. The mere fact that you are here incarnate on this planet, it is your birthright to breathe. And as you continue to feel the breath ebbing and flowing, perhaps you also begin to notice the space that your body occupies. And as you feel and sense into the space that your body occupies, just notice how on the next exhale that you might release and let go of just a little bit of tension and constriction in the body. That you might feel the forehead begin to smooth out, the jaw begin to soften, the neck, the collarbones, the chest, the belly, the womb or the pelvis, the hips, the legs, the knees, all the way down to the ankles and to the toes. And perhaps you begin to feel as though the breath actually enters through the top of the head and exhales out through the toes. Just 2 more times, feeling the breath enter the top of the head and exhale out through the toes. And then feel the breath enter through the top of the head and exhale out through the fingertips. Inhale through the top of the head and exhale out through the fingertips. Just 1 more time. And just feel and sense a wave of relaxation wash through the body on the next breath or two, without any judgment, and just letting go of any doing. Just feel into the receiving of this wave of relaxation. And then allow yourself to begin to come back, but keep your eyes closed, continuing to notice the ebb and flow of the breath. Let your awareness rest at the heart center. And I'm going to ask a few questions. So, well, just listen with the ear to the heart, and then we'll take 1 minute to rewrite the answer. So the first question is, who, if anyone, modeled how to rest and practice self-care and self-love for you? Take a moment, feel into the answer. And then when you feel ready, just open your eyes and please just free write for 1 minute. Who, if anyone, modeled how to rest and practice self-care and self-love for you? Take another deep breath or two. And then when you are ready, just close your eyes and drop in for the next self inquiry question. Eyes closed, come into stillness, awareness at the heart. What habits, thoughts, or resistance prevent you from fully dropping into deep rest? What habits, thoughts, or resistance prevent you from fully dropping into deep rest? Come back when you're ready. 1 minute of free writing. And then for the last question, just close your eyes once again, come into stillness, drop into the heart center. If part of your legacy were to change the relationship to rest and self care for your family lineage, how would you begin? If part of your legacy were to change the relationship to rest and self care for your family lineage, how would you begin? Allow yourself to come back. 1 minute of free writing. Just another 30 seconds. And when you feel ready, just go ahead and complete. If you're writing and really in flow, just keep writing. You're not going to miss anything. My name is Tracee Stanley. I am coming to you from the land of the Tewa, very close to the Tesuque Reservation and the Tesuque Pueblo in Santa Fe. And I am the author of Radiant Rest. And so Ingrid and I were talking before we started just about this book. And really, the reason why I wrote this book and the way in which I wrote it was really for you to be able to cultivate a relationship with the practice of Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is a practice that is known as the yoga of sleep. How many of you have already practiced Yoga Nidra or already teaching Yoga Nidra? Yeah. So you know that Yoga Nidra is this practice that is said to be sleep with a slight trace of awareness. But it's really so much more than that, because when we think of Yoga Nidra, we usually think of Yoga Nidra as a technique, right? Is that, oh, I'm going to do Yoga Nidra, I'm going to teach Yoga Nidra. Yoga Nidra is also a state of consciousness. And that state of consciousness is said to be peace beyond words. That state of consciousness is a place that is known as near vikalpa, a place of no thought, a place of non doing. And it is not a place that we really know that we're in when we're in it, because it's very similar, if not the same, as the fourth state, which is known as Turiya. And that state is really a portal to the infinite. And so when we think about Yoga Nidra, we must think about Yoga Nidra as technique, state of consciousness, and also the goddess Yoga Nidra. The goddess Yoga Nidra that is talked about in the Devi Mahatmya. Um, and that goddess is the goddess that presides over the journey, right? So we can think about Yoga Nidra as a full system of yoga. All of the 8 limbs that are present in yoga are present in Yoga Nidra. So Yoga Nidra is a full system of yoga. It is a technique that the goddess Yoga Nidra is presiding over the journey that leads you to this portal that is the state of Yoga Nidra. So we have to have, I feel, like a little bit of reverence for this practice. It's not a yoga nap, right? It's not a yoga nap. It really is a spiritual journey. And for some people who have never done a single asana in their entire life, they have gone deep into this practice because it is so accessible. Because the only asana that is required for the practice or the technique of Yoga Nidra is the fact you are comfortable and supported and held by the earth. And that looks different for everyone. So we try to make sure that we have different ways in which to feel supported because we all have different bodies. But Yoga Nidra is, in my opinion, a way of claiming our birthright, that birthright of rest, of deep rest. And rest really is only one of the beautiful gifts that come from Yoga Nidra. When we come back from our Yoga Nidra practice, there is this quality that comes back with us, and we are changed if we're really awake and aware during the process of Yoga Nidra. So today, I would love to just give you a little bit of my thoughts and ideas about how to cultivate a relationship with this practice of Yoga Nidra, because it seems like most of you on the call are teachers and are already sharing this practice. So, you know, a lot of times we become very attached to our lineage and attached to the structure of how we have been taught. And a lot of times there are rules and dogma that feel like if it's not being taught this way, it's not Yoga Nidra. If it's not being taught that way, it's not Yoga Nidra. If Yoga Nidra is the state of consciousness, that means that Yoga Nidra is actually something that descends by grace. As a Yoga Nidra facilitator or teacher, you are not guiding anyone to Yoga Nidra. All you are doing is merely preparing the space for the possibility of the grace of Yoga Nidra to descend, right? So even we as teachers or practitioners have to take the doing out of the offering of this practice because it's not about the doing. Yoga Nidra is a practice of dissolution. So it is a Laya yoga practice. Laya yoga is the yoga of dissolution. That means that you are dissolving everything. You're dissolving everything so that you can reunite. Remember that idea of yoga, reunite with your true nature. It is also the queen of the pratyahara practices. And so, how many of you know what pratyahara means? Anybody? You can put it into the chat if you know what pratyahara means. I know Libby knows. Anybody can put it in though. Yeah. So Nadine says it is withdrawal of the senses. So I'll add just a little bit more of an explanation that I think helps to uh, uh, understand why Yoga Nidra is in this category of pratyahara. So Pratyahara is withdrawal of the senses so that we can expand back into our origin. It is the withdrawal of the senses so that we can re-assimilate into our true nature, right? It is the very thing that allows us to just transcend the koshas, transcend all of the samskaras and the vasanas and the personality and who we think we are and the ego, and touch this place within us that is always radiant, that is always effulgent, that is always powerful, that is our inner knowing, that is the light that is beyond all sorrow. And so that's really where the journey of Yoga Nidra can lead us to. And what I'll do now is because I've been talking a lot, I will pause and see if there are any questions or comments about your relationship with Yoga Nidra or how to deepen your relationship with Yoga Nidra. And when I say deepen your relationship, I'm talking about all three of these Yoga Nidras, being the goddess, being the state of consciousness, and also being the technique. So if anybody has a question, just go ahead and raise your hand, and then I guess we'll call on you and you can unmute yourself. Okay, so no questions. All right. So let's think about the first. What does the goddess mean to you? Because we all have a different understanding, a different relationship. When you think of goddess, what does that mean to you? And you can just put it into the chat. Whole self, Lorena says, deeper knowing, ancestors, Simone says, feminine power, supreme being related to the divine, higher self. Beautiful. So there's as many different understandings or relationships with Yoga Nidra or the goddess as there are people in the world, and none of them is wrong. And so it's really beautiful when we can think about this idea of the nurturing quality that Yoga Nidra has, the quality of holding, the quality of repose. And so one of the things that I like to do when I'm about to practice or when I'm about to teach the practice of Yoga Nidra is to just invoke the goddess Yoga Nidra. There is a chant, it's really a hymn called the Devi Suktam. How many of you are familiar with the Devi Suktam? You can raise your hand. And there's a verse in the Devi Suktam. In this Devi Suktam, the Devi is the goddess. And it's really about kind of praising all of the qualities of the goddess, praising the qualities of her power, of her faith, of her sleep. And there's one verse, it goes, Ya Devi, Sarva Bhuteshu, Nidra Rupena Samsita, Namastasye, 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 Namo Namaha. So I'm not a Sanskrit scholar. So any mistakes in the pronunciation are mine and mine alone. But I would love to share this with you so that we can maybe chant it together a few times so that if this is something that you want to bring into your own practice, um, it's just a way of honoring the goddess, of honoring Nidra Shakti, which is that power of repose. So let's just chant it together. I'll do it a couple of times and then you'll get it. So it's Ya So you just repeat after me. Ya, ya, Devi, 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 Sarva, 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 Bhuteshu, 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 Nidra, 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 Rupena, Rupena, Samstita, Samstita, Namastasye, 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 Namo Namaha. We'll do it 2 more times together. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Nidra Rupena Samsita Namastasye 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 Namo Namah. One more. Ya Devi Sarva Bhuteshu Nidra Rupena Samsita Namastasye, 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 Namo Namah. So just feel into that vibration, and perhaps even just feeling into this quality of receiving, and nurturing. You may even feel as though this quality of moonlight, as though the vapors of the moon have descended into every cell of your body. And so when we think about Yoganidra as the goddess, we can even think about the goddess as being the earth as our oldest ancestor, the one that is here to hold us, support us, the one who's has the imprint still of the footsteps of all of our ancestors, has the footprints of our grandmothers, my grandmother's mothers, and all the way back to all those who are even unknown to us, that we will never know their names. But they have touched this earth and they have been held by the earth just as we are held by the earth. So consider the goddess as this earth, perhaps even as this moon, whatever resonates with you. Find a way to be able to allow yourself to be held. And so as you answered some of those questions, how many of you, in the question about the resistance to rest or resistance to self-care, did you have a resistance? Was there any resistance? What was that resistance? Anybody want to put their answer in the chat? Resistance to time, says Ingrid. Mary Lou, there is always something to be done. So, this is really interesting about time, because my experience is that once I started to practice Yoga Nidra, my relationship with time and space shifted. I realized that time, it almost felt like could be stretched, because the awareness that we weave through Yoga Nidra, right? We talked about this earlier, this idea of remaining awake and aware, having that slight trace of awareness through all the states of consciousness, so that awareness is weaving through waking state, it's weaving through dreaming state, it's weaving through deep sleep, and also moving into the fourth. That when that wakefulness is happening in Yoga Nidra and you consistently practice Yoga Nidra, when you come back into the waking state, your awareness has shifted, which means that you're not just unconsciously asleep like the walking dead, walking through life. You are awake to every moment. You are awake to every transition. And that's really what Yoga Nidra wakens us to, is the transitions and the space in between. So those of you who have this idea, because I've had it myself, there's not enough time. I have too many things to do. I have no time. I have no space. It's not happening. You start to notice the transitions. And so my suggestion, especially if you have this thing around time, is to dedicate and devote yourself to a 40-day Yoga Nidra practice. And so that Yoga Nidra practice, a lot of times we're like, oh, it's, you pick the 45-minute Yoga Nidra and you're like, I don't have time to do that. So find a 15-minute Yoga Nidra practice. Find a 15-minute Yoga Nidra practice. Begin to do that practice for a couple of weeks until you actually know how to self-guide yourself through that practice. And you can find tips on self-guiding in the last chapter of Radiant Rest. And begin to self-guide. When you self-guide, that's where the real magic in this practice begins. Right? So you do the practice by listening to the recording enough times that you kind of know what the steps are, and then you start to lead yourself through. The perpetual striving that Simone mentioned, this is a question really of self-inquiry. So it's almost like a two-pronged practice that I would suggest, which is the practice of doing Yoga Nidra every day. And as you finish your Yoga Nidra, to spend 5 minutes of free writing. 5 minutes of free writing. And for this 40-day practice, your focus will be the question, what am I striving for? And what am I getting out of striving? How is striving serving me? And how is striving not serving me? And spending 40 days in that contemplation with Yoga Nidra and free writing. The beautiful thing about Yoga Nidra practice is that it wakes us up to our life. It wakes us up to our life because we are becoming awake and aware to the transitions in the waking state. There are so many things that are veiled from us in the waking state that become revealed when we go into these other states of consciousness. And if we can actually bring some of that awareness back to us when we're in the waking state, we will learn so much more about who we are, about who we really are. So I really suggest this sadhana of self-inquiry, because Yoga Nidra is also a smriti practice, right? It's a practice of remembrance. So a lot of times we hear that word smriti and it means retention or it means memory, but it also means self-remembrance. And so if we think about this idea that Yoga Nidra is a pratyahara practice that asks us to withdraw our senses so that we can re-assimilate into our true nature, it is the smriti practice as well, so we can remember who we truly are. What happens a lot of times is we do our yoga practice, we have our shavasana, we move into this blissful state of like, oh, anybody on the call ever have a really blissful shavasana? Yeah? Blissful Yoga Nidra. And then what happens? You get up, you get into your car, or you get back onto the email, or the kids are here, or whatever's happening, and you forget. You don't even remember 2 hours later that you had this blissful practice. You don't even remember that. And when I say you, I'm not talking about you, I'm also talking about me, right? So we don't even remember when we go into our next practice. that we actually say to ourselves, oh, let me remember that blissful place that I was in my last practice. And let me carry the wave of that bliss and that memory of that bliss, that memory of me touching into the true nature of who I am, that blissful, radiant nature. And let me bring that forward to begin this practice with. We begin all of our practices with another blank slate of whatever the last phone call was, or the last person that annoyed us, or the last person that cut us off before we got there. We are not remembering the essence and the fragrance of the practice that comes back with us. So Yoga Nidra is a smriti practice. And when you do it consistently, like every day for 40 days, you have the opportunity to continue to pull that thread from the last practice all the way forward to the practice that you're doing now. That we actually have the opportunity in this moment to just close our eyes for a moment and remember that most blissful practice that you ever had. Maybe it was the first or second time that you ever did yoga, and maybe it's the thing that actually keeps you coming back to yoga. It's the thing that keeps you coming back to your mat. Maybe it's the thing that keeps you wanting to share the practice. So then you can remember that, because that's self-remembrance. And then Lorena is saying the resistance to totally letting go. And so this is another question of self-inquiry, is really what does it mean to let go? And doing these practices of, and what I would recommend is the practice of the body scan that's in the book. Let me see what page it's on. So two things I would recommend. I would actually recommend the practice on page 70, which is the energetic circles of protection, right? Bringing those circles of protection in. And I really feel, and what I've noticed, because I've been teaching those circles for a very long time, and during the pandemic, the feedback that I was getting from my friends and students were that those circles of energetic protection, the circle of the ancestors, the circle of healing, and the circle of wisdom, those circles were so profound for people. So allow yourself to do that practice, and then do the body scan practice, which is on page 64, which is essentially a practice that you would do for 40 days, where you draw your own outline of your body, right? And then you lie down and you self-guide yourself through a body scan to just notice, without, you're not doing anything, you're only noticing, where is there tension in the body? Maybe you sense that there's an emotion or a feeling. And after you complete that body scan, you just make notes on the drawing that you just made of your body, right? And then you can free write a little bit if you'd like. And you just continue to do that for 40 days. I think it will be extremely revealing. So I'm going to pause and see if there are any questions. And if there are, please feel free to, or comments, anything that you want to share or ask is welcome in the space, because in this space, we are all teachers. We all learn from each other. There's not a hierarchy in this room. So you have anything, go ahead and raise your virtual hand, and then we'll call on you. Mary Lou.
Sorry about that. Hello.
Hi.
I guess what I was thinking, what kept coming up for me was just the practice also of meditation and how that intertwines with Nidra as well, because that's what I keep coming back to. Obviously, there are different practices, but also they're pretty much, not pretty much the same, but they intertwine in some capacity. So I guess how do you speak to that? And because I try to meditate every morning, and I want to do the 40-day practice as well. But I'm doing both in a sense, am I not? If I'm focusing on myself and focusing in the present moment and so on.
Yeah, they're very different practices, because one practice, your spine is perpendicular to the floor, which brings in this quality of rajas, this quality of energy and upward moving, right? So when we're meditating, we're also perhaps maybe depending on what kind of meditation you're doing, but Kundalini is maybe rising, right? When we are practicing Yoga Nidra, the spine is parallel to the earth, and so there's a sense of tamas, right? And there's also the fact that the body is not getting in the way of the practice, most likely, because you're in a rested position, right? So you can maybe remain in Yoga Nidra for a longer period of time that you might be able to remain in meditation. However, what I would say is, or at least my experience has been, that when I have done a Yoga Nidra sadhanas, my meditation practice is much deeper. So I think that they actually inform each other. And, just as my daily practice, I'm doing both Yoga Nidra and meditation practice. So what I would say is, if you are practicing Yoga Nidra, find a time for your sadhana that works for you in the day, and then continue with the time that you've been doing your meditation practice, and just begin to notice how they transform each other, because they're different, but they definitely work together in ways that it can really deepen your practice in a short period of time. Thank you. I see, Nadine, your hand is raised.
Thank you. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. I had a very similar question to Mary Lou, actually, and some of it you already answered. I'm in the same position I usually do in the morning when I get up, like a mindfulness meditation or something similar. And then so far, I've mainly used Yoga Nidra as a way to, just when I was super tired, like as a way to recharge, or if I need instead of a nap. I haven't practiced it really daily, consistently. So I was wondering if, like, do you do both? And do you do one in the morning and one in the afternoon, or to fall asleep, or what is a good way?
These are all great questions. So while if we're thinking about Yoga Nidra as a spiritual practice, as a yoga practice, I would not recommend using Yoga Nidra as a way to fall asleep necessarily. This is kind of a longer conversation. The only reason why is because we create a vasana around literally falling asleep during our practice, which then makes it much more difficult for us to stay wakeful when we're trying to do Yoga Nidra as a spiritual practice. Now, that being said, if you have insomnia, Yoga Nidra is a good way for you to fall asleep. So what you have to be really aware of is that moment of hypnagogia, where you are in that liminal space, where you're just hovering, where you can say, oh, I feel like I could fall asleep. And there you have to say, the practice of Yoga Nidra is complete. Now I am going to sleep. But what we're talking about is a sadhana, right? So if you're doing a sadhana, my suggestion would be to do it sometime in the afternoon or the early morning, right? So depending on your cycle, your natural energy, you could do Yoga Nidra first thing in the morning, followed by your meditation practice, right? You could also do it in the afternoon. But if you're doing a sadhana, I would say try to stay away from doing it every day at night time, because I think that is going to lead to sleep and maybe the exact opposite of what you're hoping to deepen.
Great, that helps. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. we'll take one more if there's anybody else who has a question or a comment. All right, let's see what's in the chat. Sharon says, this is so beautiful. I feel like we're always about the doing of things. I love the idea of honoring the rest. I've never thought about how practicing deep breaths, yoga nidra, and self-love can affect my lineage. Yes, you know, we have been sold a bag of goods that our value, our worthiness is in how much we do and how much we achieve. We have been sold this bag of goods that our productivity relies on us always working and always doing, when in fact, rest is one of the most productive things that you can do. Because in the resting, in the practice of yoga nidra, you are becoming more clear because you're able to see with different eyes than you do when you are just unconsciously going through the waking state. And when you see with those different eyes, you are more inspired, you are more creative, and you are more able to see how to move from A to Z without having to go through all the steps of A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You actually are opening yourself up to wisdom, not only your own inner wisdom, but ancestral wisdom of how to move through life in a way that is efficient and clear and intuitive. And that is much different than going from the place of the thinking mind when you're doing, doing, doing. And the only way to really know that, the only way to really experience that for yourself is to do a consistent practice for 40 days and really see the difference of what happens in your life. Okay. Let's see. We have a few minutes left. Is there any burning question before we go? Thank you, Sharon, for asking or offering that into the space, I should say. Thank you. Any burning question?
I want to share something that you mentioned at the beginning, which was how if you're the yoga nidra teacher, your role is in guiding them. You're giving them the tools or such as a meditation, the Sankalpa, giving them the preparation in order for the person themselves, to take that journey, to take that moment, to bring it, to own it, which I didn't see it that way before, which is something very interesting to actually mention to the students, versus having them think that the instructor, the teacher, is helping them, guide them through this journey, when really they're the owners of the journey. So thank you so much for that insight, that perspective. That's
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning that. You know, in the teachings of Tantra, the tantric teachings tell us that the teacher is there. And so I don't like the word guru, but we can say the guru means the one who is there to lead you towards the light, right? The teacher is there to bring you back towards pointing you towards your own inner knowing, to your own inner teacher. So the teacher is literally the one who is there to empower you to find and embrace your own inner teacher. And so when we're practicing yoga nidra, hopefully we have a relationship with this state of consciousness. We have a relationship with this goddess, with the technique, because we've done it so many times. We've done so many 40-day sadhanas, right? That it allows us to kind of tune in to the wavelength of yoga nidra and really just allow our personality to move out of the way and allow the practice to just descend. You know, it's almost as though it is flowing through you, as opposed to you being the one. So anytime you come in contact with a teacher and you've had some sort of, whatever, mystical experience, and they are trying to tell you that it's them, that they're the ones that made it happen, I would say move and go in a complete opposite direction, right? Because we're here as facilitators, but it's not mine, right? This is your journey. This is your inner knowing. This is your inner teacher. And that's where you're being guided to. And that's the place that we all deserve to taste in this lifetime. So thank you for bringing that forward, Ingrid. I appreciate it. So Yuki has a question. Both. I'm going to read Nadine's first and then Yuki. For the 40 days, you recommend practicing the same Yoga Nidra meditation for the entire time, and how long should it be, more or less, to be effective? Well, there's a teacher by the name of Swami Veda Bharati, and he taught a 3-minute Yoga Nidra. So the idea that it needs to be long, this is a construct of commodifying yoga as well. It's like saying you have to do an hour and a half practice for it to be worth something, right? Once you become attuned to the frequency of these states of consciousness, and once the wakefulness is weaving through, you can literally be in a 5-minute Yoga Nidra practice. So my recommendation is to choose one Yoga Nidra practice that has a period of time that works for you, right? Don't choose the hour long, because then you'll have all the excuses not to do it. And just receive. And then after about 2 weeks, just see if you can begin to just self-guide by just remembering, oh, okay, I know what the first step is. The first step is I'm going to lie down. I'm going to become comfortable. The second step is I'm going to observe my breath. Maybe I'm just watching my navel rise and fall. The third step, and I'm not saying these are the steps, I'm just making these up as we go. The third step might be I'm counting my breaths backwards all the way to 0. And if I lose count, I go back to the beginning. Right? Whatever the nidra is that you're working with, just see what you can pull from that without thinking. Because if you do it for a couple of weeks, eventually this is going to be in your cells already. And you may find that you begin to be guided by your inner teacher towards this portal of nidra, and that the technique falls away. Because the technique is just a technique. It is said in the teachings that when one has mastered the state of Yoga Nidra, they can enter Yoga Nidra, the state, at will. There is no technique required, right? So for self-guiding practice, would you recommend a recording and listen to your own voice, or just guiding in the mind? So it's guiding in the mind, right? So when you start to, there's all kinds of things that happen when you record yourself and listen to it. I see this all the time with our Yoga Nidra teacher trainees, because we ask them to record themselves. And then it's like, oh, you're judging the voice, you're judging this, all the things. So just allow yourself to be self-guided just with your mind, the same way you would if you've remembered a meditation, right? When you do your mindfulness meditation, or when you're doing your other meditations, your kriyas, you're remembering, okay, I have to go from base of the spine to top of head. Sorry, you have to do 1.5 hours of any practice so it can bring the benefits to you. No, that's not correct. Not in my opinion. There could be some teacher that told you that, and maybe that's their experience. What I'm saying is that you do not have to do 1.5 hours of practice in order for it to be beneficial. What you have to do is you have to know and understand the what's called vinyasa krama, what's called wise progression. You have to understand, what does each power do to my subtle body, to my gunas, to my chakras, to my breath. And if I know what each posture does and each breath does, then I can string together 3 or 4 postures with the proper breathing in 15 minutes and have the same effect as a much less wisely sequenced class that is an hour and a half long. So it's just about that. You don't need an hour and a half of practice. You need a teacher who is skilled at being able to create alchemy, right? Which means that I have a specific thing that I am trying to achieve in this class. And for most practices, we're trying to move towards a sattvic state, right? And so that means I need to know which guna is most dominant now and which guna do I want to move towards. And then if I know that, do I also know what is the alchemy of postures and breath and meditation that I need to create to move me towards the desired guna? I hope that makes sense. Thank you, Katya. Okay. We have 4 minutes left. Any other questions? And then I'll end with a short chant, a different chant to the goddess. Okay. Libby, I see your hand.
Thanks, Tracee. I have been finding that with my nidra practice and even my meditation practice, but probably more so with my nidra, that I'm having a hard time with my daily life, like the responsibilities in my daily life. Like I get in the mode of like doing or like, and not even just the doing, but there's something that like it carries over into my nidra, or if I get really into my nidra practice, then that like peacefulness makes it harder for me to do my work in my daily life. And so I'm just like, yeah, I don't know if you have any thoughts around that.
Think about timing. So, for me, I kind of know that my mornings are my sacred time, and that my time to kind of work is this time when the sun is at its highest and my mind is at its most active, right? And then once the sun starts going down, that's when I kind of close the book on the doing and more into the being. So see if you can just be aware, what are your cycles of like creativity, inspiration, and spaciousness, and then schedule your yoga nidra practice more when you're in that spacious time, and just, figure out when that is for you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's a good reminder.
Yeah. Good to see you. Okay. So we're going to end with this short chant, and this chant is part of the Ratri Suktam, which is said to be the hymn or the song that Brahman sang when he was trying to call on Yoga Nidra to wake up Vishnu from a deep dreamless sleep, because he was being attacked by demons, and Vishnu, who is the preserver and the protector, was supposed to be protecting Brahma. And so I'll just chant it, and then I'll give it back to Ingrid to close us out. Somya Somya Tara Shesha Somye Vyaswati Sundari Twameva Parameshwari Para Paranam Parama. So she who is beautiful and more beautiful, with a radiant and moon-like glow. All of the peaceful, beautiful qualities of the moon. Please make yourself manifest. Thank you all so much for joining. It's been an honor to be here. Thank you, SOULFest. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ingrid.
Thank you so much, Tracee. This was such a beautiful moment because you brought in such deep knowledge in what you shared. that I felt we were being nurtured as you said those words, as you brought your tone of voice, your experience, and the questions you asked us that brought it back to the practice, to us, uh, bringing it, bringing attention and awareness to how Yoga Nidra is so important to bring rest into our lives. That it's not something to be uh, pushed aside, but really to nurture, just like you did with us in this moment, us doing it for ourselves. And to so thank you very much, Tracee, for your time and your beautiful energy to this chat. If you would like to share any additional resources for the group that you recommend for us to check in, a book, please let us know.
Yeah, so I would definitely recommend Dr. Gail Parker's book. It's called Yoga for Race-Based and Ethnic-Based Trauma. I would also recommend Resmaa Mekanam's book, My Grandmother's Hands. I would also recommend Michelle Cassandra Johnson's upcoming book, Finding Refuge. I would also recommend, let me think about this. I think those are 3 really good places to start. You can also read Daring to Rest by Karen Brody. It's a Yoga Nidra book for women. And so, you know, thank you so much for your beautiful observation on the nurturing quality. But what I will tell you is that that nurturing quality that I possess comes from having done many sadhanas with Yoga Nidra consistently. And so it is not, it's something that we all have. It's something that we all have. And it's one of those things that becomes revealed the more that we practice. So I encourage you to just keep revealing, keep revealing, keep revealing, and keep practicing and reading. And I hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone here on this journey with us today. If you have any comments, questions, please share. SOULFest will be sharing the link with everyone who registered for the event.
Thank you so much, Ingrid. And thank you to everyone who took your time out of your evening or day, wherever you are in the world, to join. I really appreciate it.
All right, everybody. Have a beautiful evening. Wish you all well. Thank you, Tracee.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.